Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License Flight number 49 with service to Orange County. We ask that you please fasten your headphones at this time, secure your podcasting device, and remember, a new feature on this TV Pilot's License flight is that we are actually in a gated community. So, in case of an unexpected crash, allow that additional levels of security to comfort you on the way down.
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Rich Inman and Max Singer. How are you boys doing today?
I just want to say, all of you guys are so lucky you're not in range of me throwing wine.
You can't faze me, Rich. I'm going to take these mysterious pills I just found. I think they're called icebreakers.
Well, boys, this week we are diving into the Real Housewives of Orange County. As for folks who are joining us for the first time because we're finally doing Real Housewives, or folks who maybe just have found us thanks to the random search engine algorithm that brought you here. Max, do you mind telling folks what this is all about?
This is what finally got you here? Fine. All right, here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn about how these productions came to be, if they're effective pilots and making us want to watch more, and if they could be made today. Go back and find our older episodes wherever you get podcasts from. Check us out on YouTube to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us for Real Housewives, then welcome aboard.
And I want to say, everyone really tuned in for the John from Cincinnati episode and stayed. So we don't have to do this anymore. We saw a massive John from Cincinnati bump.
Yeah, we did Real Housewives of Cincinnati.
Oh my god.
That's where that show took place, right? Cincinnati?
Yeah, you paid attention.
Well, Max, thank you. Rich, what is your question of the week this week?
Well, I think if there's one calling card for the Housewives, and we don't really get it in this particular episode, but is you get the concept of a tagline for all the people who are going to be featured on the show. And I would love for you guys to tell me what your tagline for if you were a housewife would be.
I think it might be something like, I don't BS, but I do have IBS.
Gang, gang.
Gang, gang. Ice cream so good.
Ice cream so good. Is that what you just said? Oh, my God. Oh, wow.
Oh, God. Well, I went a little bit of a different route, Rich. I might be a dog dad, but you can still call me daddy.
Wow. You were not kidding. All of your ideas were very horny.
I did say
wow.
There are four more that we will maybe talk about later.
All right.
Rich,
Mine
what
is,
about you?
They say I'm one in a million people living with this rare foot disorder.
Oh my god, that's so dumb.
I wish I could have stood up and done a turn.
Oh wow, so you're the housewife to Dr. Scholl. Okay.
Yeah. I'm a kept woman.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for that question of the week. And I would say, if you're listening to this, why don't you down in the comments put what your tagline would be, and maybe we'll share the best one in our next episode on Instagram. So before we dive into the Real Housewives of Orange County, a quick synopsis. A look at 5 families living in a protected Southern California enclave and the real-life housewives who reside in one of the wealthiest planned communities in the country. I'm just going to say it. It's really gross that they say that they're in a protected Southern California enclave in the description of the show. But Max, can you tell us a little bit more about how this show got made?
Today, we are talking about the premiere pilot episode of The Real Housewives of Orange County titled Meet the Wives. Yep, it had a title, and it premiered on March 21st, 2006. So, background context, in 2005, Bravo announces plans for 6 new reality series to capitalize the success of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. One of these shows, at the time titled Behind the Gates, was promoted as a real-life look into the homes and lifestyles of women similar to the characters on various successful primetime soaps, combined with some of the aesthetics of the 1970s PBS reality series An American Family, which is often considered to be the first reality show on television. So the show itself was created by Scott Dunlap, who's had a lot of different roles in Hollywood over the years. And after moving to Orange County from Los Angeles and settling into the neighborhood of Coto de Caza, Scott got to know his neighbors and was fascinated by these interesting people he would meet at parties. For a little bit of context, Coto de Caza is actually a community of 15,000 people and is one of the largest gated communities in America. One,
Jesus.
15,000 people in a gated community is insane. Two, the fact that it's not even the largest one of these planned gated communities in America is even crazier to me. So Dunlap focuses on some of his neighbors who've gotten to know the Keogh family with their former model, Playboy playmate wife, and their baseball playing husband, as well as someone newer in the neighborhood by the name of Kimberly Bryant. This sizzle reel they filmed was enough to get a pilot ordered by Bravo when it came across the desk of the network's brand new vice president of original programming, a young man named Andy Cohen. To quote Cohen,
Yes, our king.
I watched it. I couldn't believe how sexy and Californian everybody seemed, how big their boobs were, and the way they spoke to their kids. I'm not sure we totally knew what it was, but I knew if it worked, it would be a soap opera.
Now, Max, can you try to do that again as Andy Cohen? I know I'm asking you on the spot.
We really pushed it with the Iron Chef voice. Let's not make Max be a gay Jewish man.
So now that they have this sizzle reel they want a green light, Dunlop and Bravo actually took out ads in local newspapers throughout Orange County to try and attract potential cast members. One person who responded to a local newspaper classified was Michael Gunvalson, Vicky's son, the college student home from break that we see in today's episode.
Holy shit.
Through Vicky, they find Lori, and then Joe was found from her then boyfriend at the time, Slade Smiley, responding to the ad. Dunlap and other producers are on the record as saying Slade just wanted his 15 minutes of fame wherever he could get it.
Well, he was also a child actor, if I remember correctly. I think that was his backstory. So he was like the recognizable face, I think.
He also was like a tasteful nude male model that they show him doing some posing for. So NBC Universal Executive Vice President Lauren Zalzadek is credited with creating the show's title as Real Housewives of, open them up to unlimited spin-off possibilities. Ironically enough, a choice that Andy Cohen so strongly opposed, thinking that it sounded awkward. Now, to get this pilot made, they dealt with constant protests from the Coto de Caza Homeowners Association and equipment that was limited to a camcorder and 4 karaoke boxes. If you think this looks like the shittiest home movie you've ever watched before, guess what? It does. It's filmed the exact same way as your dad taking you to the beach in the 90s. So they filmed this
and just
pilot
as
footage.
Dramatic.
And actually, this is an example of what we see is not part of the original pilot footage. Bravo scrapped everything they shot at first and were prepared to just shelve the show entirely. They said that it was awkward. Confessionals weren't working. They couldn't get people to bite into creating actual situations that they wanted to follow. So they brought in hired guns. Bravo pumps an additional $140,000 into the production and hires longtime soap opera showrunner David Ruppel to overhaul the entire project and help create these narrative storylines and plot moments that become, the bread and butter of Real Housewives. And so, are we ready to take a look behind the gates?
If we have to.
You guys ready to jump into Real Housewives?
Yeah, it's so funny to me that a gated community is like, it's 15,000 people. It's not safe. That's not the gates are useless at 15,000 people. But also, so funny that like no one can get in, but like a Bravo film crew can. Like every single day they're filming filming in this neighborhood is so funny to me.
There's two rival HOA meetings, one to oppose the filming and one to see who has a camcorder they could borrow.
We start off this pilot with exterior shots of Orange County. and luxury. But then we get this just disembodied voice saying, life is different here in a gated community. Now, Rich and Max, I don't know how often you've watched The Real Housewives in any form of the universe, but what were your first thoughts when you heard this and saw the lifestyles of it felt like the lifestyles of the rich and famous, but instead it's in Orange County. What did you guys think?
I was furious, but not for the reason that you might suspect. I was so angry because they talk about this community, Coto de Caza, and they say the average home price is 1.8 to 2.2 million, which and like the houses are fine. And I live in a neighborhood in LA where like 1.8 million might get me like a burned out shack. Like the house would literally be on fire and some realtor would be like, it's a hot property. Like the fact that like 1.8 in LA does not get you what 1.8 got you in 2006. And it makes me so sad.
Did you happen to Zillow any of the houses in this particular neighborhood? Is that why?
I didn't Zillow the neighborhood, but I did look up where Coto de Caza is, and it's way more inland Orange County than I thought this was gonna be. Like I was expecting.
Oh, it's not Welcome to the OC, bitch.
No. It's not that. It's not, MTV's kind of this time Laguna Beach either. Like this is inland Orange County. When they talk about going to the beach, I'm like, and you spent all day in traffic? Are you kidding me? Like.
I love that. Yeah, the little note at the bottom of 9 million people in the United States live in gated communities was so insanely funny to me. I just like, it is so not interesting of a fact. It just means that there's like 9 million people who got suckered into buying expensive property where all your houses have to look the same. And then yeah, I mean, that was just my first takeaway from it. And Max, don't worry about the housing prices, because in just a year after this episode airs, all of them will be worth only $750,000.
Oh my god!
I do think that when you're not behind the gates, you don't know what you're missing. Maybe the bitchiest line of exposition we've ever had on the show.
Also, I love a double negative.
But did you guys watch mid-aughts TLC?
Yeah, Max, I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is the first thing that I thought of. Like, this feels like the same crew that filmed My 500-Pound Life, or one of those TV shows.
I was getting like the same camera look and like artistic style as Trading Spaces. And if you ever watched Four Weddings, where they would make four women like compete and vote and rank each other's weddings, it was very nasty. I love it. But it's that same look, that same filming, that same lighting. Even when they first show the families, and it's like the women are kind of in the front, but the families just kind of like posing and dancing and being silly behind them. It reminds me of a mid-2000s TLC show, and it's bonkers just looking at like where they're at now, like 18 years into this franchise as a whole, and how sleek it is, and like how big the homes are. And right now, it's so quaint. It's so family home video. I don't know. It wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah, and like, as we begin, before we get to this point, like the only thing that's taken us out of like, hey, you, the poor people who are watching this show, like you don't have $1.8 million or whatever it is to afford a home. Like, other than that, it does feel, Max, as you said, down to earth. But this show does give us something that I want every single show to do. And that is, it gives us the characters' names right at the top before we've met anyone. Before we've met anyone, we meet all of the women that we are going to be giving a shit about.
Yeah,
and I think that is
this is giving me white blonde woman that's 42 years old facial blindness. Like, I probably could go the entire episode without being able to pick any of them out of a lineup.
The thing that it does remind me is there are certain TV shows now that almost dramatize the concept of the lives of the rich and famous. And this is that, like, real life version of them, real life being in gigantic air quotes, because, you know, everyone's dad is a pitcher who fell out of the MLB, and, you know, or the fucking man Don. We're gonna talk about Don because Don's the fucking man, and I can't wait to talk about him.
I feel like we got more baseball in this pilot episode than we did in. I was so shocked at how much baseball was involved in this.
We got more baseball and we got more basketball than we did in our March Madness special.
I like how Rich has 42-year-old blonde white woman blindness, and Geoff has fucking mad blindness because I can't tell them apart. They're all the fucking mad guys.
So, in this episode, there are 5 different women that we really focus on and we learn about. And rather than trying to take with the show pace of going back and forth, because I absolutely appreciate cutting between each of these women, because otherwise, if you just told Vicky's story, you'd sort of be like, okay, Vicky doesn't have too much going on. Oh, shit, let's talk about Lori. Lori doesn't have shit going on either. But we have to intersplice this drama with, like, the Joes and all of that stuff. What do you guys think about just speaking about each of these women and sort of your impressions based off of their life and the stories that we may find out about if we were to continue watching this?
So the first person that we meet is, was it Gina?
Gina.
Gina.
Yeah, sure. That looks right.
So Gina, she works in real estate. She's a former Playboy playmate and actress. I did find out that she was the video girl for all 3 of ZZ Top's biggest songs,
Hell yeah,
which is the greatest fun fact we're going to get into.
Truly.
Yeah, they say that she's a model, but like she's the girl from like the video for like Legs. Like, you lead with that. You got to draw in an audience. You got to get the men. She's the Legs. But then she follows up this amazing information with one of the most disturbing quotes, where she talks about getting to meet her husband, Matt, a former Major League Baseball player, and getting to meet his family, and how like the family kind of pushed him to pursue her, saying that she had the right build for her husband's family's genetics.
Boy,
Now,
yeah.
I don't want to push any ideologies on someone that I've never met in my life, but this was the most I've heard about eugenics since I had a World War II lesson. And it literally was horrifying hearing this woman talk about, oh yeah, my mother-in-law picked me out of all of my husband's many girlfriends because I was the one that could produce the greatest child, basically.
Well, yeah, she had legs and she knew how to use them.
Hey, there you go. Like, Rich, you never watched this show.
No, I sure haven't.
What did you think about meeting? Well, first of all, I think you were instantly bought in when you were like baseball, because that is your trigger.
Yeah,
word.
I was like, boy, the show has really something for everybody.
Yeah, you can Manchurian candidate Rich into watching anything on TV if you throw a baseball bat.
But what did you think of this woman who was, you know, she did own her own business. She was successful in her own right, selling houses and real estate within the Orange County area. Like, it seems a little bit different than what I was expecting at first, but I'd love to hear from you.
Look, I mean, there is the very noticeable bottle service girl to real estate specialist like pipeline, and I think this was really the first start of that. I think this is I think she was of the first generation to go from posing for Playboy to going into real estate. I mean, honestly, like you really could not have picked like a more, I don't know, K-list celebrity than a guy who played for like 7 different major league teams and then bounced around the Japanese leagues for baseball, and then like tried to focus that try to focus that as the main part of like this series, you know. And I was going through this, and I don't think these families are really a draw by themselves. They're all a little despicable, to be honest. Like, I think a lot of this whole show plays on a lot of like, oh, I want to hate these people, or like they're going to say something specific to that's going to be bragging about their own life that make me want to hate them. And I don't know, I just haven't really all of them, I haven't really found a lot of connection to like wanting to know more about them. But I guess that's why only 400,000 people tuned in to the first episode.
So one of the I love watching a show and thinking of alternative titles for said show. And one of the activities that I found, or one of the most appropriate activities, was Everyone's Dad Makes Me Very Sad. That is the alternative title for this show.
Boy, is that the truth.
Because
is that the truth?
With Gina's husband, you can tell every one of those children, other than we don't really meet the youngest son, but for the most part, the oldest son just wants his dad's love and wants his dad's appreciation. The middle daughter has to make deals with her mom for money and flowers and gifts, and like basically has to get paid for success rather than her like mom showing up to anything. And I don't know how the youngest son is doing. We didn't meet him in this episode, but I have to think something's going on. But all at the same time, the one thing, like, I know parenting isn't good TV, but the one thing I'm sort of wanting is, like, can you guys be the adults and, like, please, like, love your children like normal people might love them, and not as, like, science projects of, like, who can be the best athlete?
I'm going to say this 100 times during this episode, Geoff. That is not good TV. It's really not. Quality parenting is meant for like stuff. This is a terrible example, but I can't think of a different one. That's like meant for like the Cosby Show. That kind of stuff is not. Yeah, yeah. There is an element of really one. I think a lot of the narrative around these cast members is built on like rooting for them, but also hating them at the same time, which is very fascinating. I think for Gina specifically, you want to root for Shane, you want to root for Kara, and but also like you kind of hate his dad, and you kind of also secretly don't want him to succeed because he's like, I got a Mercedes at 16, and then 2 weeks afterwards, I wanted to get rid of it because someone told me it was a girl's car, and I'm like, I literally want to kill you. I'm like, do I want you to go in the 37th round of the Major League Baseball draft? Sure, I do, just so your dad doesn't beat you on live television. And that was, I mean, that was a legitimate fear. That was like I played travel baseball. The way that he talked to his son during that game was very triggering for me. That was not a far-flung thing for Little League or high school baseball back then. And it probably isn't now, or it's probably the same now. But yeah, it was like really bad.
With this family and how much of the whole family we see throughout, the moment that killed me is that when Shane's doing his confessionals and not wearing a shirt, it's such a degree of no one knows how this is working. Like even on the production side, where it's like, should we tell him to dress up? Like no, keep rolling. Like we only have like 40 minutes in this like JVC camcorder. We got to keep going.
There is like an element of, I feel like some of this is like stolen from the early trials of MTV reality TV. There's like some Super Sweet 16 feel to this. I don't recall what came out first or anything like that, but it does like, I mean, if Shane threw some puka shells on, I'd be like, wow, this could be on any TV network right now. That was it was extremely reminiscent of that. And I think that's why some of the interactions feel pretty forced too, where it's not like the kids don't seem bought in that this is going to be a real thing or that their parents are really going to be on TV. So they seem kind of normal and natural. And then everyone else feels a little bit forced.
Well, yeah. On that, where it's like no one knows this is going to be a thing. Like none of these kids are media trained or camera trained. There's a point where it's like they're getting ready for the middle school dance with another family, and I know we're jumping a little bit here, but a girl just pulls her dress from the mall out of the shopping bag. Like it's not like haute couture. It's not from a designer. It wasn't made just for her and tailored.
Yeah.
This is something that she went to the mall, went to what was it? What White House Black Market? I'm guessing. I don't know. I'm just throwing out 2006 mall stores here. And then she just pulls the crumpled dress out of the bag and is like, "Okay, let's go to the dance." Like these kids they're just kids, and there is something. I don't know. You look at it with 2023 goggles, you're like, "Oh, you're all doomed. Like all of you are doomed."
So I'm glad you brought that family up, Max, because I think you're speaking about Kimberly Bryant's family. And Rich, you talked about like boring people aren't going to be interesting on this show. And I really want to quickly talk about Kimberly, because Kimberly in this pilot was the most boring person in this pilot. Kimberly just moved with her family from Baltimore because her husband is a Fortune 200 finance executive. Her fun
just
fact,
making up titles.
Yeah. Also,
fun fact
Fortune
was
200
that-
doesn't
yeah.
exist. That's just like there's Fortune 100 and there's Fortune 500. There's like you just want to say, oh, I'm not 434th on the list.
Kimberly, like, we sort of get this juxtaposition from Gina of Kimberly is a stay-at-home mom who, when she moved to California, her husband wanted her to get breast augmentation surgery. That was like 90% of the words she said were just talking about that. We got a very sexual scene with her Pilates instructor that I don't think anyone really needed.
That went on for so long.
So there was also, from Kimberly, we sort of get this perspective of seeing her try to shelter her kids from everything that is Orange County. And actually, you know, after watching this episode, I was like, Kimberly's daughter, Bianca, seemed like the most normal of the people that we see on this entire thing. I was really curious. I did a little bit of research. I'm happy to say she is a normal human being who is working for a Fortune 100 organization as a e-commerce digital marketer. So, you know what? Good for you. But I think that also might have something to do with her being on only one season of the show. Because who knows what would have happened to that family had they been on more than one season of the show.
With Kimberly Bryant, what I find interesting is that this is probably the most like, I don't know, the archetype of what we envision if it's like Orange County as a whole. Like of the five people we focus on, 3 of them are stories of I am trying to balance business and motherhood. One of them is like the child. We'll get to Joe. And then you have Kimberly, who is very open about my husband wants a trophy wife. We turned 40. We needed to come up with ways to spice things up. I got plastic surgery, you know, because I've done this. I want to make sure my daughter feels comfortable in her body as well. This is a thing that I did at 42, but it's like she is almost like a different story compared to the rest of the women.
And I think that's necessary, right? If we had 4 Ginas, if we had 4 Joes, if we had 4 Kimberlys, we would all be here like, oh, I'm not sure how this made this past a single season, but the different perspectives are very much a necessity as a whole.
I'm glad that you mentioned the call term sheet, Fred, because Fred is JV housewife. Friend is we like this person or they've been brought into our radar and we don't know if they're going to work on the show. So we're going to bring them in as someone's friend for like a whole season. They're going to start to get into like the peripheral and we're going to gauge like what's the audience response? Do they have good chemistry with the other women in the show? And then they could either like promote them to a main cast member, or if someone leaves, they can kind of like slide into their spot. And if they don't, then they're just the friend who kind of pops around now and then. But like friend is like it's like it's minor league housewife.
I love that there's understudies for Housewives. That's very, very funny to me.
I mean, I absolutely get it, given, just thinking if Kimberly left after the first season, they had to find someone to fill that slot as quickly as possible so that they could maintain that 5 women sort of mantra.
And although they make her a main part of this, the friend role is kind of what we have with Vicky and Lori. I guess like the next two we could talk about here. Vicky being an insurance agent who owns her own business. She talks about building this insurance empire for herself in Orange County after having 2 kids at a young age. And then her entire drama in this pilot is just kind of being controlling on her daughter's prom night. But then you also have a coworker of hers, Lori, who is a single mom. She's a friend of Vicky. She got this job from Vicky to try and get some cash together. They make her do the most evil thing on this pilot that we see, which is they make Lori stand in front of her house that she lived in before her divorce and give a confessional to us. That is the darkest moment on this entire episode.
This was absolutely bananas to me. That one, you're putting in this woman who's already been through so much, through this traumatizing thing of saying, hey, you want to be on this show that might be able to help you make some money, but we just have one small request for you. Can we go back to the house that you lost and that your husband kicked you out of, so we can film a few exterior shots of you pointing at the house? That's bananas.
Yeah, they could have done that interview anywhere. They could have done it anywhere. That was a totally unnecessary thing for them to do. And honestly, if the biggest villains of this show are going to be the production team and the network executives, I guess that's kind of how it's going to go.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where that very easily could have been a producer just says, hey, we're going to go and film these exterior shots, and we're just going to use Lori's words to almost narrate these shots that we have to make it even sadder. The thing that sort of with Lori as a whole, because one, I do appreciate that the show had this woman who is fighting for herself, who is fighting for her family. The pride that we even heard Lori, I really hope genuinely say with the idea of this is my townhouse, it is mine, and I own this, is something that I feel like everyone has that sense of pride when they own something for themselves.
Totally.
But then for the producers to be like, yeah, but isn't it super fucking small? And they did those wild cuts of the bedrooms and all that shit.
Well, yeah, but it's only her and her son.
Her son and her youngest daughter.
Oh, yeah.
Her son with his stupid 2006 Ryan Cabrera top 20 video countdown looking ass haircut. And
oh my God.
And then she gets a completely different conflict point in this, where it's her 20-year-old daughter wants to move back down from Los Angeles and wants to move in with her full time. It's it's the moment in this where it's you see the Vicky and her daughter storyline. It's you need to be home by 2 after prom, or else I'm gonna be mad. And then Lori is dealing with actual serious motherhood dilemmas. It's her stakes are so much higher, and it's fascinating to me that of all the people whose stories we've touched on so far, it's Vicky who's been in 14 of the 17 seasons of this show. Vicky is the star to come out of this pilot, and I wouldn't have guessed it watching this, that she was going to be the person who we're going to follow the most in years to come.
So I think that's so interesting that you bring it up, because just to put a cap on Lori as a whole, the cliffhanger that we have with Lori is that her 20-year-old daughter, who she thinks has moved out and she no longer has to take care of, appears to be the worst. Because the daughter owns a car, has a dog, but does not like the concept of paying bills. Yeah. I don't know what this daughter was doing in LA prior to returning to the OC, but it's just one of those things where I'm just fuck, Lori, I want to help you out. I feel genuinely awful, but I
Yeah.
don't think that's why people are tuning in. They're tuning in for the for literally the concept of like, oh, how ridiculous is this, and how like trivial are their problems. Lori has a real fucking problems, and it's
Yeah.
too real for some people.
And then she has to go blow off some steam and go to that really shitty 2006 club to grind on those really mediocre 2006 Orange County dudes.
Yeah, baby, you gotta grind to some Akon out there.
I do have on in my notes that one of my favorite lines. I don't know. Can we call them lines if they're reality TV?
Sure.
But
Yeah, sure, why not?
One of my favorite lines was a dude that just went up to Lori and just said, "You're incredible," without talking to her prior, and then doing a spin around, which was
It is
bonkers.
a sea of full-on grinding, and both men and women in what I can only call going out shirts, and it is such a it is such a deeply triggering 2006 flashback. It is so I used to have this like brown and gold pinstriped shirt from Kohl's that like I definitely wore to a sophomore year of high school.
Yes, you did, because
dance at some
I
point.
know that.
And
I know that shirt. You wore that in
it's-
college.
Oh god, I still had it in college. Well, I was still going out, baby. It's awful. I don't want to be at that club.
In
ever.
my notes, it is, if Ed Hardy was a place, it would be this club. That is
Also, I will say one thing too, that now that we're talking about it, like there's no chance on earth that the club scenes are not faked, because how on earth are you going to get audio in a club? How are you going to be able to get dialogue audio in a club? It has to be fake. There's no way.
Oh my god.
Well, I'm taking a look at the Billboard year-end Hot 100 singles for 2006, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on whether or not these are hot grinding tracks or not. All right, so I'm just going to kind of skip around here a little bit. Temperature by Sean Paul. What do we think?
Yeah. What? That is the grinding song. Just play that for 3 hours.
Alrighty, so following that, we got Promiscuous, Nelly Furtado, and Timbaland.
Wow.
Let's see, what else is looking hot on here? Grills, Nelly, Paul Wall. We got Buttons by the Pussycat Dolls.
That is my number one grinding song, I think, of any of these. 100%. Are we like that? Yeah, no, there's no competition anymore.
Oh man, 36 of the year end. We got Ms. New Booty by Bubba Sparks and the Yin Yang Twins. That's got to be it for me.
So, speaking about Lori and that club scene, trying to let loose all of that, I do want to speak about Joe. Because Joe is the child. Joe is the 23-year-old that is married to probably the biggest... See, here's where I'm having trouble. Some of these men are so terrible that I don't know who's a bigger villain. Is it the former washed-out MLB player, or is it Slade? One, Slade's name really leaning into the villain arc. As
Slade Smiley.
But,
I do want to say though, like, and this is not, we are not a tea spilling podcast. We are not a throwing shade at individual people who sign up to do reality TV shows podcasts. But whoa, after seeing even just the pilot episode, I can't believe any men have agreed to be on the show at all. Like since this, because like, you know what you're getting into, you know, you're getting a villain arc. There's no way in hell that you're getting out of a season unscathed if you're a guy. Like, I feel like no one roots for any of the men involved in here. I guess that's kind of, it's the ego that really puts you there.
Be better, do better.
you know that Slade is the villain when he says, "I'm eager to teach and she's eager to learn," which is just one of the most bananas things that has ever happened.
Joe is fascinating me because I do feel like she is the person in this pilot episode who has the most prompted moments to either advance a storyline and also use as kind of a linchpin to tie some things together. Joe has, the phone call outside of the club at 3 a.m. Joe has the moment where she approaches Kimberly out in the wild and is like, "Do you live in Coto? Like, I'm trying to make friends." And they kind of start to tie some of these lines together when they kind of explain, Kimberly's whole the way my husband and I spice things up as we got older, and we keep things interesting. That leads to Joe trying on.
No one should have sex over 35.
it leads to Joe like trying on what I guess was sexy 2006 fashion, like feather boas and zebra print hats, but it's her calling Slade, being like, "Honey, I really need you to come home now." Like, I'm pretty sure that you can see that there's not a phone being dialed.
She's talking into a TI-89 calculator.
It feels like if Lori is to show like the powerful single woman, and like Kimberly is, the quintessential middle-aged housewife, Joe is the producer, is just like trying shit out. Like how much can we get away with? Like, how much can we maybe script here? Like, we got this idea, but we don't know if anyone's going to do it. All right, give it to Joe. Make Joe do it.
All those meetings did feel extremely forced, and they probably were, because obviously, like, you're getting called to set that day. That's like, if you're having lunch somewhere, you're not just popping in. There's still, even though Coto de Caza is like a community, it's still like 12,000 people or something like that. It's not a small community by any means. Like, you're not just like randomly running into everybody down at the general store. But I think for me, those felt the most forced, and it really did not. I don't know. It just like everything still feels very much like, what is this? I don't know. Maybe I'm giving people a little bit too much credit, or that they're like nicer than they should be, but or than they appear. But yeah, some of this still seems like, oh, what is the context to where they came up with that sentence? Like, why are they talking about how much money they made for something? Why are they talking specifically about how much this one thing cost? Like, who is really pushing them to do that?
So we have one more housewife that we really haven't spoken about in too much of an extent, and that is the one that lasted on this show the longest, with Vicky. Our background on Vicky is is a woman who found success after divorce by becoming a very, very successful insurance saleswoman. It almost seems like she is able to employ others, like Lori, who we've talked about. She has this oldest daughter. She has a daughter. She has an older son. And that's really it. Her husband does not seem to be a part of the picture at all. She remarried to a dude named Don, who just seems like he randomly walked on set, and they were like, "Oh, we got to film Don doing stuff." So it's like, "Don, wash your Mercedes. Don, drink a beer." Like,
Don's the guy running Crafty.
You kids need anything?
Do you guys want some blue potato chips? And then he got a 13-season arc.
Jeff, I'm sorry. Keep going.
We're talking so much inside baseball that Rich is really in it now.
What was 2006? That was like, are we still in Lorna Doone territory? I feel like that's definitely like those Snackwell cookies and stuff like that. I feel like we're still in.
Not Lorna Doone. They're near your Belinda.
Oh my God.
Jesus. Also, can we just talk about Mike Sr. for a little bit? Because this guy has the most Chicago accent I have ever heard in my life. I cannot believe how that this guy's voice is real. I've lived in Chicago for so long, and I truly have met maybe one other person. People I know have lived there for 50, 60 plus years, and none of them sound like that. And I am so stunned.
And how many of those people are on TV, Rich? How many of those people are on national TV in your living room?
Does Jim Belushi count?
Oh,
man.
Jesus Christ. Oh, God. I don't know
God.
how we can even talk about Vicky now, but because Mike Sr. just, absolutely stole the show for the 30 seconds he was on screen.
Well, and then he
Yeah.
shows up to his kid's graduation party, and everyone is like dressed really nice for this backyard party, and he's wearing a fucking Ron John shirt.
Yeah. They, honestly, everything about Mike Sr. makes me want him to succeed. I want him to,
Oh my God.
if he's he's from Chicago, so I assume he's a cop of some sort, or like everyone in his family was cops at some point, because he talks like every single Chicago policeman that's ever lived. And I just really, what a fish out of water thing. Just throwing him
Mike
in the middle of
Senior's
Orange County.
favorite designer is the boardwalk. This man has never bought a single item of clothing that's not from the Wisconsin Dells.
Hey,
Oh my God.
These palm trees are pretty nice, but I haven't had a good Italian beef in 3 years.
Tell Mike Senior there's a Portillo's now in Orange County, and he'll be a good father.
Oh my God.
Oh, Jesus.
So to try to get us slightly back on track, even
To
though
Don, right? Yeah.
No, not even to Don. I do want to talk about Vicky because Vicky gives this sense of the woman who's figured it all out for the most part. She has these successful elements that we've seen in Gina. She's able to give the love to her kids that, we haven't seen some of these other women give. She has the ability to be in what seems to be a happy marriage, even though we see Dawn for maybe a minute of this entire pilot. And all that. And she's also extremely wealthy and extremely successful to the point she's flying in her family to watch her youngest child graduate from high school and go to college while maintaining a fairly, I say, decent relationship with her daughter, but obviously strained relationship with her eldest son.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting to have this woman be the central figure in this pilot as a whole.
So,
but
I am wondering,
go for it, Rich.
Because in the same sense of Survivor and other reality shows, I am wondering, Big Brother, I am wondering if there is a strategy to this where she does not want to have too much of her life exposed early on, so she can play a longer game of people learning gradually more and more about her. Like, I almost think that, if you really want to be on the show for a long time, I think Gina's family did expose too much of themselves in the first episode, because this first season only lasted from March until May. So we really, you don't get a whole bunch. And if you're burning through screen time in those first couple episodes, people are going to get tired of you pretty quick. And maybe she's just playing the long game.
Yeah, it has to be that, right? There has to be more. You have to have more interesting stuff about you happening and bringing the drama, because from my perspective, it almost seems extremely manicured for the most part, and that's just not going to be good TV at the end of the day.
Do you think you win more points being a shit stirrer or being the more dramatic one? I feel like, if you're being the more dramatic one, people want to see you act out. If you're being the shit stirrer, you're almost taking over for Andy Cohen and just talking about you're just I'm going to incite as much shit as I possibly can. And, by coming up with the hard pressing questions that force people to fight each other, that's my role. Is that more or less what you guys see?
The shitsters and villain arcs are entertaining until no one wants to film with you anymore. And that's the thing that happens in a lot of big reality shows where a villain overplays their hand and overstays their welcome. Thinking about Spencer and Heidi on The Hills or Christine Quinn on Selling Sunset, where they're the fan favorite until it just gets old and then people don't want to film scenes and they're stuck filming stuff by themselves and it's not entertaining because they don't have new connections. So they're just rehashing the same old shit. And then, you're yesterday's news. So I think you do have to find that balance of how much can you get into the drama without losing sight of moving your arcs forward and being interesting beyond just petty.
Yeah, it's almost like you are in control of jumping your own shark. If we're bringing this back to, normal TV, right? Like, the moment a show jumps the shark is sort of the moment that people give up on said show. The moment that you are too much, you are too ridiculous of a villain for reality TV, or, you're just doing too much chaotic shit where people are tired of having you on the show, is probably the moment that you go from being a main housewife into being a friend, or maybe just even being a guest who appears here and there. But with all that being said, that is our pilot. I would love to hear from you gentlemen. What are some things that you loved about this pilot that maybe we did not discuss during our synopsis of the show?
Alrighty. I've been wanting to talk about this all day. Because we only had one camera to film so much of this with, every time we're in Joe's kitchen, they put the camera on the exact same angle to capture as much of her kitchen as possible. but the camera is pointed directly at this big ceramic Italian chef statue.
That was truly beautiful.
And so every time Joe is trying to have a conversation in her kitchen, there's multiple times where we show her either trying to figure out how to pass her day or on the phone with a friend. Like,
I'm staring at Mamma Mia the whole time.
There's just the most stereotypical giant curly mustached Italian chef statue right in there. Someone could have moved it. Someone could have moved the statue anywhere else in the kitchen, and no one did.
You don't think that's a prop? That's a prop for the show.
Rich, what about you?
Some real classic iMovie editing happening in this. I feel like I like that they were able to get a decent amount of story off with almost no understanding of what's going to happen. Like you immediately sense a lot of tension. Like, yeah, you're meeting people, you're hearing their backstories and stuff like that. But they're able to kind of captivate you a little bit with where you think these relationships are going to go. I think shows like this have a weird ability to make you start trying to predict things, which I think gets people coming back. I think that's the most captivating thing. It's like, oh, these two aren't going to get along. Oh, these two might. That kid's going to be disappointing, or that kid will probably surprise us all. And I think they did a good job of that for having no context, no understanding of who these people are from the first second. What about you, Geoff?
Yeah, I hate that I'm saying this, but I need villains. This show has so many different people to choose from. And we could say every man that basically comes across the screen. Is it Gina's son who doesn't want to go? Is it Gina who has to go to a charity gala instead of going to her son's graduation that her son doesn't want to go to because her son obviously has some form of learning disorder, most likely? Is it, in this instance, Ashley, the daughter that doesn't like the concept of bills? ? Is it Slade, who owns a Hummer? His name is Slade and he sucks. Or, is it the human
There's a lot to his personality. There's clearly.
Is it the human embodiment of deep dish pizza that is Mike Sr.?
I just want more Mike Sr. I want a Mike Sr. spinoff.
We're going to talk about
called Chicago
in a
PD.
little bit. We're going to talk about spinoffs, Rich. But yeah, there's just so many villains. So there's captivating moments for me that are within this show. We talked about things we love. What about, in this instance, wait a minute moments? Things that caused you pause, that you said, holy shit, when you saw that across your TV screen.
Okay, look, when I started watching this, in the first minute, I decided not to take notes my usual way, and I just wrote, oops, all wait a minute moments.
Oh my God.
Because that's the only. I mean, they immediately start wanting you to hate them with all the talks about the consumerism and how much things cost, talking about money all the time. But for me, the biggest wait a minute moment was the graphic that comes on over Mike, who it says in 1973 he was voted to the MLB All-Star Game. In 1977 he lost 14 games in a row on the mound. I'm like, my God, what, he got absolutely torched in that edit.
Max, what about you?
It's gotta be the entire Kimberly intro package for me, from the explanation of her breast augmentation and what her original cup size was to what she was brought up to the handicap zooming square in on her sports bra to show you, and to then the lengthy sequence.
In TV, we show, we don't tell.
In which I thought her and the Pilates instructor were going to bone. Like I was like convinced that this was going to be like an affair plot line or something. It was just so. It was so, and that's their story to tell. It was just so hypersexualized in a way that nothing else after that even was. Like, even for Kimberly, there was just this like 90 seconds of hypersexualization. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah, and I will say for my wait a minute moment, it was when Lori insinuated that a home that's under 2,000 square feet is not livable. That is absolutely insane. Like, if you told any millennial right now that they could own a home that was under 2,000 square feet, they would be like, give it to me.
There's 900 square feet homes going for over $1 million in fucking Highland Park out here in LA.
I was going to say, we literally live in a time where tiny homes are selling for over $150,000. So to tell me that like a small home is 2,000 square feet, you can fuck right off, Lori.
Once you put all those Italian pizza chef statues in there, you really only have like 800 square feet to play with.
Oh my God.
My favorite cameo.
So we do have an in-flight question that I got the last minute. Yes. This was DM'd to me personally. Please just DM TV Pilot's License on Instagram. Don't DM me personally. It was really weird finding that. But the question was, there are a ton of different installments of the Real Housewives. What would be the worst place for there to be a Real Housewives franchise to be based out of?
Real Housewives International Falls, Minnesota. That's where they track. That's where they track the coldest temperature on the Weather Channel for the contiguous United States. I just want a bunch of people who can't leave their homes.
Max, what about you?
Well, I'm trying to think like what do all these things have in common? They're all in either major cities or in like a wealthy enclave of an area. I'm trying to think, what is a city that has an industry? And to me, that's got to be Gilroy, California, home of garlic. I want to see 6 people running garlic empires. All talking about how they're trying to spice things up in their marriages.
Wow,
that is that's pretty great.
I can see it now.
So I thought in probably the most traditional mindset that I've ever thought of what requires there to be a good season of Real Housewives. Well, usually there has to be interesting women, or more women than there are men. So what if we picked the town that had the smallest percentage of women to men as far as a ratio? So I then went ahead and did a little bit of research for this, and the town in the US that has the smallest percentage of Women to Men is Jackson, Mississippi. So I would like the Real Housewives of Jackson, Mississippi.
Wait, is Jackson, Mississippi the dude's rock capital of the U.S.? Is that what we're talking about?
Where there is 52.1% of the population is made up of men to 48% of the population being made up of
a lot of Bon
women.
Jovi album sales down in Jackson, Mississippi.
Well, thank you so much for that in-flight question. We'll talk a little bit more about how to submit those at the end of the episode. Let's talk about the history of this show. For the show, there have been 17 seasons and 297 episodes. That is spanning across a wide variety of different women who have been on this show. Vicky lasted the most of this original pilot, going all the way to 14 seasons. Kimberly was on it the least, lasting only
That's a big
one.
genesis, too. That has to be...
Yeah.
I mean, so that the show has to have evolved so much over 14 years. I can't imagine.
So, a couple of other things that just sort of stood out to me when looking at the history of this show. Rich, you talked a little bit about how few people watched the pilot episode of this show.
Sure did.
But the most watched season, based off of averages, was season 4. There were 2.17 million people who tuned in on average per week. Considering that this is cable television, that is pretty decent numbers as a whole. Now, I do want to talk about exclusively this show. There was one spinoff called Date My Ex, Joe and Slade. So I think that gives a little bit of context clues / spoilers. But additionally,
I really thought they were going to make it, you guys.
Yeah, they seemed really like marriage material as a two. I want to talk about how many different versions of the show exist. Just in the US, there are 11 different versions of this show that were produced just in the US. That includes Real Housewives of Dubai, which is still made based out of the US. I don't know. I'm not the producer. But there are 23 there are 22 additional spin-offs that have been produced internationally around the world. So Andy Cohen, you get the long-awaited Daddy of the Week of Daddy of the Real Housewives universe, because holy shit, that is a lot of shows to be a producer of.
Chef, there are 6 different versions of this show in South Africa alone.
Whoa.
To no one's surprise, there are no major awards that were given to this show in all of the extensive research of this show that I have done, but I am sure that Gina has won some form of Realtor of the Year award in all of her efforts. But we know her husband got to go to one All-Star game, so that's cool. But that is really our history of this show, or the legacy of this show as it potentially continues. Rich, what is your game of the week?
Well, I'm so glad you brought up all 22 Housewives cities, because I want to give you guys some hints and see where you can pick out the next upcoming Real Housewives city. I guess I'll just do this for both of you to chime in on. All right, if you want to see Chuck Norris's mom throw wine at Rue McClanahan and Ron Howard's mom while Roy Orbison's dad tries to break up a fight, you'd watch The Real Housewives of St. Louis, Wichita Falls, Hot Springs, or Pensacola.
I didn't like that noise. I'm gonna say Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Arkansas as well. That seems to track with Roy Orbison.
That is Wichita Falls, Texas. All right, if you want to see a stage mom battle between two women who name their famous daughter Demi, both Lovato and more, you want The Real Housewives of New Mexico, Las Vegas, Oklahoma, or Oregon.
Oh my
Alrighty,
God, these are so.
We're gonna go Oregon.
I'll just for difference sake, I'll say Las Vegas. Let's go for it.
It is the Real Housewives of New Mexico. We have two of the three most famous Demis of the world. Demi, did you may come on the pod? If you my final question is: if you want some real historic cattiness, look no further than the place where Andy Warhol, Jeff Goldblum, and Jonas Salk's mom set up shop on the Real Housewives of Poughkeepsie, Fairfax, Pittsburgh, or Atlantic City.
That's Pittsburgh, baby. Let's go.
Wow, that was super confident. And yes, it was Pittsburgh. Did you know that's where Jonas Salk was from? Or
I knew that's where the Andy Warhol Museum is.
I was gonna say it was the museum. Yeah,
brilliant. Okay, well done.
Yeah.
All right, 1 out of 3 ain't bad. This is probably my hardest. I think this is my hardest quiz yet.
I love that quiz. Absolutely.
When this game started, I thought that you were going to have us guess where upcoming editions of the
me
show
too. I'm not going to lie.
They are.
I was going to say, who are your resources? Well, Rich, thank you so much for that game of the week. Well, gentlemen, I have 2 more questions for each of you gentlemen. And that is, based off of this pilot and this pilot alone, would you continue watching this version of Real Housewives, or maybe even just continuing the first season? And then my second question is, with all of the Real Housewives content, the Real Housewives universe that exists, do you think that we really need 33 different versions of this show? Or should there maybe not be an 18th season of the original version of this show? Max, I'll start with you.
So for me, while I loved this blast from the past, I loved taking a trip down memory lane of 2006. I don't think this is a thing that I would continue watching, even just pilot alone. I don't think that it was something that gripped me in a way that I want to keep going back and binging it, watching it. I know that people do, and if that is your thing, I don't mean to yuck your yum. This show has fans for a reason. It's just not something that I think I could get interested in. Do I think that this franchise should keep going? Yeah, I mean, if there's stories to tell and people are tuning in, why the hell not? Same goes for any other iteration of this franchise. If you could find people who have compelling stories, interesting angles, something to say that maybe we haven't seen in this franchise before, then yeah, by all means, give it a season, give it a shot. If you're rehashing the same old song and dance, then maybe it's time to hang that up. But clearly they're finding new powerhouse franchises in recent years. Things like, Potomac and Salt Lake City that have huge fan bases that are fairly new. So yeah, keep digging, keep figuring it out. And keep letting Andy Cohen drink on New Year's Eve.
Rich, what about you?
He promised he wouldn't do that anymore, which is unfortunate. That was the only reason I got excited for New Year's Eve.
Andy Cohen, come on the
pod. No, I am going to say no to both, and I'm going to be less generous than Max was, unfortunately, too. That I think there's something about the human instinct that this is designed to evoke. I think that that these shows are kind of just really diving into people's worst instincts, and the audience, I'm not saying that people should have to re-examine why they watch a certain thing, but they also should examine it a little bit. I think that you should sit and watch why this intrigues you so much. I feel like a lot of people tuned into Succession because they like to see rich people behaving badly too, and they also like to see them get their comeuppance and stuff like that. And I think we're still building on kind of a basic instinct of class traitorism and hating people for who they are, their views, or the system that they're in, or encouraging them to fight one another. You start to see all of the branches of Housewives expand in 2008 when the strike was really forming. And I really think that we should examine why that like this became such a prominent form of television. Like, it just like watching it does not make me feel good. It does not like, it's the same reason I haven't liked Twitter in about like, I don't know, 8 years. Cause it's just like, it evokes like a certain anger out of you. It evokes like a certain like, you know, oh, I'm better than that. Or, oh, that person's really mean. Or that person's like, thinks they're big leaguing me specifically, that kind of feeling. And it just rewards that kind of behavior. And for that reason, Sharks, I'm out.
So it's a maybe.
It's a maybe. It's a soft maybe.
Rich, thank you so much for the preview of your TED Talk in a week or two. So I'll round us out. Based off the pilot, no. There's other reality TV that fills me with joy that somehow has a little bit of a sense of happiness and hope without tearing down others that I really enjoy watching, and we're going to be talking about in future episodes of this podcast because I think folks need more of that in their lives to be able to get that joy. With that being said, do I think that there's a place for this show? Yeah, there is, right? Like, we all have our garbage. We all like eating our junk food, right? And this is some people's junk food. And, you know, like some people like Flamin' Hot Cheetos. Some people like, you know, Pop-Tarts. Some people like the Real Housewives. And as long as people like the Real Housewives and Andy Cohen can look at a map and say, like, what about this place? Cool. We're going to have more seasons. Rich gave 3 great ideas of seasons of Real Housewives. And I don't think we're going to see the end of that, at least in the near future. With that all being said, and as our flight comes to an end, where can we find you two gentlemen?
you can find me clearly watching episode 2 of this season of Real Housewives of Orange County. And you can also find me on Instagram at Damn That's Rich.
You could find me washing a cool car, drinking a cold beer, and on all things social media at Maxwell Singh.
And you can find me very patiently waiting by my computer, still trying to see if I'll get drafted in the 2005 MLB draft. You can also find me on social media at RunJeffRun on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. You can find the TV Pilots License on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere you stream podcasts at TV Pilots License. If you have a question about the show or for our next episode, you can email us at tvpilotslicense@gmail.com or give us a call at 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for our Instagram for a sneak preview of some of our upcoming episodes. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then, support writers, support actors. Let's get less reality TV and more great art.